All right. Good morning, colleagues. Zwanga, can you just confirm if I'm audible?
Yes, you are
yes,
audible.
you are very much okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Can I just please ask participants in the platform to please keep their cameras off and just also to keep muted. I'll just switch on my camera for a bit just to show my face, and thereafter I will all right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Viwe Fokwebe from ECSECC, and I am the facilitator for this session. You are at this platform attending the dialogue focusing on marginalized youth. Thank you all for attending, and you are welcome at the session. I will, just to improve on transmission and related, I will switch off my video, and I'll suggest that everyone coming into the platform to please keep their cameras off. All right. Just keep it off. All right. Are you at risk of experiencing a lost generation of youth? This is our topic for today. South Africa is witnessing astonishing and alarming rates of youth disengagement at large, as large masses of frustrated young people find themselves socially and economically uncertain. What are the implications and what are the possible solutions? Ladies and gentlemen, we are holding this dialogue on the backdrop of Youth Month. The 1st of June marked the start of a Youth Month, and tomorrow, June 16 in particular, we are honoring and recognizing the sacrifices and contributions of youth from 1976 for the freedom and for the fight for freedom for education. The theme for Youth Month this year is promoting livelihoods and resilience of young people for a better tomorrow. This year's campaign seeks to highlight challenges faced by youth, possible solutions, as well as showcasing opportunities available for youth. The topic today then is so relevant as it aligns to this theme. On screen, ladies and gentlemen, is the program. Do not alarmed by the number of speakers you see there. We will try our best to manage the time and to allow sufficient time later on for discussions. Dr. Kambale and team completed a report titled, "Has the social profile of the marginalized youth improved in the Eastern Cape?" This report then forms the basis of our discussions today. Dr. Kambale is the Senior Economist at the Eastern Cape Socio-Consultative Council, also known as ECSECC. He will lead the main presentation, which is the overview of the socially and economically uncertain youth and implications. I will now hand over to Dr. Kambale to take us through the presentation. Over to you, Dr. Kambale, if you can fly to your presentation, and the platform is yours. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues, and thank you, Program Director. My name is Kambale Kavese. I'm going to take you through the findings of the presentation. Am I audible enough?
You are very clear, Dr. Kambale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So mine is just to take you through the findings of the report that was compiled by myself, my colleague Andiswa and Zwanga. We wanted to highlight the social profile of the marginalized youth in the province. And I'm going to start with a quote from Iran that says that marginalization is perhaps the most dangerous form of oppression, that it happens when people are expelled from useful participation in social life. So I'm going to take you through quickly, and Andiswa is going to assist me with the technology. I'm not going to take you through the entire presentation with the numbers, but we're going to highlight few findings from the report. The first one is to show that the youth population has declined by 10%. As we see from the graph, between 2014 to 2021, the population of youth declined by 10%. Also, I'm going to take you through the implications of all this. So the next slide, you can see I'm not going to take you through all this. The next one indicates that approximately 71% of young people employed in the province are earning below the minimum living wage. So I think the panel members, we're going to go through the implication of this and they're going to talk about it. The next one is mainly to show that our young people that we call the marginalized one, that the bulk of them are not in employment, in education, and in training institutions. And this number increased by 23%. In other words, for every 100 young people, there have been an additional 23 that are joining the pool of those who are in the need. But let me not bother you with all these statistics. You can go through them in the report. Probably let's jump directly to the findings. Okay, like I've already indicated from the beginning that 10% that during between 2014 and 2021, the young population in the Eastern Cape declined by 10%. And this could lead to deprive the province from reaping the optimal demographic dividend. Because we know that change in population has a lot of implication on economic growth. And this was the first finding, which has a lot of implications on, which has a lot of fiscal implications in terms of the low tax base, fiscal allocation, and equitable share. Also in 2020, the report found that about 22% of households in the province were headed by young people. 22% of households headed by young people. This has a lot to do with reproducing a cycle of poverty, low economic growth, and more importantly, lack of economic sustainability. So we also know that the province has the highest number of unemployed people that reached 73% recently in our last quarterly labor force survey. Another finding is about the number of people who are staying in traditional dwellings. The report finds that the Eastern Cape province has the highest proportion. We're looking at 28% in 2014 and 22% in 2020 of households with young people living in traditional dwellings. And we know that this has a lot of implication. It has to do a lot with marginalization of our young people, because these people who are in these traditional dwellings, they have poor basic services compared to those who are in a formal dwelling. Also, we know that poor shelter without adequate ventilation, without proper light, proper sanitation, we know that this have an impact on health and education outcome of the province, of the young people. And I wish our panelists, also go through all this in our discussion to see how could this be improved. As I mentioned, that having a high number of people who are in extreme poverty, this leads to another cycle of poverty, because children who grow up in poverty, they will have poor education, they will struggle to get jobs, and when they want to start families, it is likely that they will, reproduce another family in poverty. I'm reminded about a young person, a young boy that I took from East London to PE. He was coming to look for a job, and for him it was the first time to come out of his village, and already the frustration, the emotional things that he was going through, the fear of the unknown in the big city, that alone could cause him even to forget to give proper answer for the interview. So sometimes we look at numbers, but we forget these emotional things that our young people in a rural area goes through. So this leads us to another series of findings that are linked to social exclusion, deprivation, social marginalization of young people, and more importantly, low productivity. The report finds that between 2014 and 2021, that youth need in the Eastern Cape, we're talking about those not in employment and not in education and training institution, that the number increased by 23% between 2014 and 2021. Here, the main policy question that we need to highlight is, how do we reintegrate these young people into the mainstream economy? Another finding is that also linked to social exclusion, deprivation, and marginalization of youth is the high number of youth who are inactive, which is around 53%, and also a high level of youth discouraged sick workers, which altogether contribute significantly to social exclusion, meaning that we have more people that will end up in poverty and who are marginalized. Another finding is that young people in the Eastern Cape are working in the informal sector. Between 2014 and 2021, young people employed in the Eastern Cape informal sector grew by 9.7%. We know that this has high implication in terms of informal sectors lacking proper salaries. They don't have social security. You know, the salary is low, and they don't have even access to medical aids, and they can't really plan properly. Another finding is that 48% of young employed people had an incomplete secondary education. This is almost half of young people employed who have not even completed their secondary education. This has a lot to do with productivity, a lot to do with how are they going to cope in this fourth industrial revolution. Those are the questions that we need to address. In terms of reasons why young people do not look for employment, the study finds that about 65% of young people who said that there are no job available in their area. That is the main reason why they will not even attempt to look for employment. And also, another finding is that approximately a third of young people in the province, they walk to go to work. And about 13% of the young people, they don't even have a valid driver's license, compared to 31% in the Eastern Cape, in Gauteng. So, you know, when you don't even have a driver's license, some other jobs require a driver's license. We can't neglect these small issues. Also, as I already mentioned, that during the first quarter of 2021, about 71% of employed young people in the Eastern Cape, they earned less than the minimum wage rate. This has a lot to do with poverty, inequality, and low economic prospect in the province. Hence, we see young people trying to, you know, to move, to leave the province and look for greener pastures elsewhere. And also another finding is that in 2020, 4 out of every 10 Eastern Cape households with young people relied on social grants as the main source of income. In reality, we know that it is better to have wages and salary as the main source of income. But these things of relying only on grants, social grants, and we know that this social grant, for some of us who are working, is not even enough to give you a full tank for your petrol. Now, giving that this increased vulnerability of our young people. Also, the report finds that about 43% of young female, they live in a household without an employed person. Almost half, 43%. And we wonder why some of these end up in prostitution, and also the province having a high rate of early pregnancies. These are elements that contribute to marginalization of our young people. But there is also good news that the proportion of young people in households that reported hunger between 2014 and 2021 declined by 7.7 percentage point in the Eastern Cape. It even declined by 9% in KZN. The next slide speaks about health of our young people. The report finds that about only 6% of young people aged 15 to 34 have access to medical aids. This has a lot of implication on excess demand in public hospital and clinic. It also has high implications on health budget. As I'm drawing to the conclusion, we also find that the report also finds that 35% of young people in the Eastern Cape, they felt safe to walk alone at night in the area. We know that crime activities discourage foreign investment. No one wants to invest in an area where crime is high. And we know that these crime activities, they are not only due to COVID-19, they are due to all this illness that I've mentioned before, namely high level of unemployment, inactivity rate among the youth, a lot of them being not in employment and education, a lot of them having earning below the minimum living level, lack of education. So all this could contribute to crime activities among the youth. Now, also there was a question about how the youth trust their the national, provincial, and local government. And the result shows that there was a low level of trust in local government. Only 64% of youth said that they trust their local government. The rest did not show any trust in their local government. So the report concluded that we need to improve our engagement with the marginalized young people. So involving the marginalized young people in the youth policy formation, it has a lot of benefits. Firstly, it leads to more comprehensive and responsive and relevant policies in the province. It also promotes inclusive development, and it brings positive and creative solutions to complex policy changes. It also decreases marginalization, of course, and it could contribute to young people's skills and confidence. It also promote wider understanding, because sometimes we think we understand the youth, or the youth also think they understand government. But I think these dialogues and engaging the marginalized youth, young people in policy formulation is very important. And I close by saying that young people must be engaged throughout the entire policy life cycle. Sometimes the marginalized group are engaged within with the initial policy development, but when it's come to implementation, evaluation and review of the policy, these marginalized young people are left behind. I think let me stop there, and thank you, Chairperson. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kambale, for your presentation. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That was Dr. Kambale giving us the overview of the socially and economically uncertain youth and implications. Thank you so much, Dr. KK. The presentation highlights the issues facing youth, marginalized youth in particular, that are at the center of the lost generation. What does this mean for us? I mean, what picture are these numbers or is this presentation painting about the prospects of young people? Why are we finding ourselves where we are, and what has been done in the past and what has worked? And if not, what it is that can be done or improved based on the current realities. Sponsoring these questions, colleagues, because these are some of the issues I would love for you to ponder on as we move for discussions later on. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now receive Ms. Asanda Luwaca from the National Youth Development Agency, the NYDA, to engage us on the perspectives of the NYDA on youth disengagement and possible solutions. Just please note that we will be releasing Ms. Luwaca immediately after her address. I mean, the NYDA has a primary mandate to address challenges faced by the nation's youth. Therefore, they are a critical stakeholder and very key in the youth celebrations. So she has a very packed program today and leading to tomorrow, and has therefore requested to be excused. I'm told that there are some colleagues from the institution that will remain in the platform for any questions or areas of clarity later on. So Ms. Luwaca is the current executive chairperson of the NYDA, National Youth Development Agency. And Ms. Luwaca, without any further delay, I will hand over to you. If just briefly you can share with us the view of NYDA on youth disengagement and possible solutions. So over to you, Asanda.
Thank you very much, Program Facilitator. Mandibulise to the fellow panel members, the youth leaders and esteemed youth that are present on this particular platform. Greetings to everyone, and thank you for giving us or affording, particularly myself, the opportunity just to respond to this particular theme. Now, I must just firstly apologize, colleagues. We are in Eastern Cape, and where we are positioned right now, network connection is quite unstable. So if the platform is comfortable, I would request that my video remain off. However, if colleagues feel that I should attempt to switch it on, I'll be guided by yourselves, program facilitator.
No, it's fine, sis. I think in the beginning I did say that we can keep our cameras off, so it's okay. You can go, especially get so we are comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you very much, facilitator. So greetings once again, and all protocol observed. So my remarks this morning really comes against the backdrop of, the triple challenges that we identified, and that being of inequality, poverty, and unemployment. Now the reality is that the economy has not been growing as it should be. And what has been a spillover effect to that is that sufficient jobs are not being created to be able to meaningfully absorb the large numbers of young people who are unemployed. Now, what then becomes a critical question would be, how do we address this particular challenge? And one of the ways is to ensure that in our interventions, we are intentional and deliberate about being a coordinated or rather about having a coordinated and integrated approach insofar as youth development is concerned. And this approach primarily underscores or emphasizes this idea of coordinating all stakeholders, private sector, government, civil society, in really taking this opportunity to reflect or even reimagine the collective commitment that we ought to have insofar as empowerment and development of youth that will ultimately be responsive for driving sustainable as well as innovation of organizations in the future. Now, linked to that is also the need for us to decisively deal with youth unemployment as it is a national crisis, and ensure that the youth labor market is functional across all spheres and all sectors. Now, if I may, program facilitator, just briefly reflect on some of the key policies and legislative prescripts that have or would be able to assist us insofar as being able to spearhead our mandate. Now, we've got the National Youth Policy, which was adopted by Cabinet in October 2020. And really, this policy is a collective expression of our commitment to improving the lives of young people. So beyond being an implementation plan for this particular policy, as well as a coordinating instrument, the policy is also the youth sector's contribution to the national goals of ultimately reducing poverty, inequality, as well as unemployment, as expressed in our NDP, the National Development Plan. So these goals are at the heart of youth development and the heart of the agenda of youth development, which is operationalized through the 5-year medium-term strategic framework. So at the level of the agency, we've got our various strategies and annual performance plan, which further espouses the NYDA's commitment in ensuring that it plays a pivotal role in the coordination of an integrated youth development strategy in order to be able to meaningfully address challenges that I've outlined. Now, this year, we would be commemorating the 46th anniversary of the June 16 uprising that happened in this country. And particularly, the students of 1976 that were in protest against the imposition of Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. Now, at the level of the agency, this year, we would have marked or identified Youth Day and particularly Youth Month, the month of June, and inculcate a theme that we felt would be a true reflection of the status of youth. And the theme that we would have agreed upon is the need for promoting sustainable livelihood of young people for a better tomorrow. Now, I'm strongly of the view that we no longer as a country have the luxury to just talk about youth development, but have the collective responsibility to make sure that it is tangible. Now, at the level of the NYDA, we've got various products and services that are currently in place to ensure that they are responsive to an evolving business environment. And if I may be allowed just to really expand on some of these initiatives that we do have in place. Now, it is safe to say that we, the youth, are really faced with the legacy of apartheid and the challenges born of democracy, with the imminent reality of new threats such as your global health pandemic. We've got your climate change, increasing mental health challenges, as well as, cases of gender-based violence and femicide, and the rapid advancements in areas such as information and communication technologies, ICT. So one of our main concerns for future generations of this country is that the rapid developments in artificial intelligence technologies leave the majority of our youth behind, right? So many young people from peri-urban, rural, as well as townships have remained largely at the periphery of your socio-economic progress or processes rather, and the development structures, with little recognition as them insofar as being critical role players. So as such, the NYDA seeks to really offer a range of products and services, both financial and non-financial. Now, these products and services serve as a startup investment into the aspirations of young people seeking solutions across sectors such as your agriculture, your digital markets, financial services, construction, to name just a few. Now, for instance, the NYDA grant program, which is designed to provide young entrepreneurs with an opportunity to access the financial and non-financial support for the respective business developments in order for them to really enable them to establish or grow their businesses. Now, the program focuses on youth entrepreneurs who are intentional, promising, and at early stages of enterprise development. And it's safe to say that as at the level of the NYDA and in the next 3 years, we will ensure that we issue 9,000 grants and about 3,600 vouchers to young people. Now, young people in the service sector consumed about 50% of the grants issued in the period of 2021 and 2022. Now, the service sector really consists of your consultancy, your car wash, maintenance, artisan, etc. The retail sector rather was also well represented in young people receiving or being recipients of those particular grants. However, data tells us that there is not much demand that was seen from young people in, your critical sectors such as your education, transport, marketing, arts and culture, and ICT in particular. Now, when we further broke down this data, according to our grant distribution across provinces, Gauteng would have received the most or the bulk of the grants, followed by KZN, Mpumalanga, and Western Cape. The unfortunate reality is that the least disbursements were from Eastern Cape, Northwestern Free State. Now, the spatial distribution, particularly in the Eastern Cape, was 4%. Now, this then becomes a serious concern, especially given the statistics that the doctor spoke about insofar as youth underdevelopment, particularly in the Eastern Cape province. Now, obviously, when we unpack this data against the backdrop of the research report by the Eastern Cape Socio-Economic Consultative Council, we are quite worried that we are in a position where youth unemployment is particularly high in the province, and yet, young people in the same province are not necessarily taking up the opportunities that are presented. I won't go into the statistics insofar as youth unemployment in the province is concerned. I think the previous speaker would have quite covered me sufficiently in that regard. But what then, a critical question that I'd want to perhaps pose to today's discussion is that what does all of this data tell us, and what is it reflecting? how do we begin to answer this against the backdrop of the theme that we have agreed upon at the level of government insofar as Youth Month and Youth Day is concerned? Now, this is a trend that we find particularly concerning as the board, and we really recognize the mammoth task before us as your various stakeholders on the need to be responsive to what appears to be an unfavorable development of young people in the Eastern Cape. Now, the report the report that we were presented with this morning would have further found that I think in the year 2020, about 22% of households in the Eastern Cape were headed by young people. Now, the province's unemployment rate for youngsters aged between 15 to 24 reached an alarming rate of 73%. So it's quite clear that vulnerability is inevitable when a marginalized, unemployed young person is the head of a household. Some may enjoy free education at primary level, but the case cannot be said and argued at a tertiary level. Now, this is particularly concerning, as we know that when we don't have young people that are able to access institutions of higher learning and not benefiting from opportunities such as the Solomon Mahlangu Scholarship Fund, then we find ourselves, or we risk finding ourselves in a situation where we leave a particular cohort of young people behind. We'll find ourselves in a situation where, the disparities between those that have the means as well as, juxtaposing with those who don't will be quite large. So at the level of the NYDA, issues of education and skills development cannot be overly emphasized. And as such, we've got, various programs such as the Solomon Mahlangu Scholarship Fund, so that we're able to span that gap where, other government institutions are unable to reach. Now, this particular fund is a fund, it's a 10 million Rand fund to really assist financially deserving young people in pursuing quality education in institutions of higher learning, with young people in rural areas a primary target. Now, at the NYDA, we also have the National Youth Service Program, which is, government initiative to engage young South Africans in community service activities in order for them to strengthen areas of service delivery, promote nation building, foster social cohesion, as well as to assist young people to gain the necessary occupational skills to afford them the opportunities so that they're able to have sustained livelihoods. Now, the NYS is it's rather an appreciation that the challenges confronting youth are also deeply rooted in the social ills that are confronting the youth as well as their families. So the role of nonprofit organizations in areas such as your early childhood development programs cannot be understated. Now, as the NYDA, we have the responsibility of ensuring that all government departments play a critical role in addressing the scourge in child-headed households. Now, program facilitator, I think it's safe to say that there is overall consensus that, amongst the relevant stakeholders, that whilst the efforts of the NYDA have contributed towards, closing and spanning the socio-economic gap amongst young people across all spheres, this against the growing inequalities, it's safe to say that more can be done. So linked to that is this idea that the agency alone cannot address the many challenges confronting young people in this country. And therefore, we recognize the importance of private sector, government, as well as civic or civil society in taking this opportunity to really have a collective approach to youth development. Now, as the NYDA, we have taken measures to increase access to information for most young people. Our internships, learnerships, bursary schemes, and just to name a few, are all programs that are in place to assist, the growing number of unemployed graduates, so that we are able to assist the many young people who are looking for assistance insofar as growing or establishing their businesses. Now, when we were appointed at the level of the board 6 or so months ago, the more we spoke about youth development, the more we realized that advocating for a more coordinated and as well as a cohesive approach to youth development is important now more than ever. So this is why we are encouraged and pleased to welcome, Cabinet's adoption of the integrated youth development strategy. And this strategy best provides context of the NYDA's philosophy around this idea of youth mainstreaming. And put simply, youth mainstreaming can be understood as a strategic tool for youth development across all stratas of society. Now, this particular strategy in its nature is designed in a manner that ensures as well as necessitates that all stakeholders understand their role insofar as youth development or the youth development space is concerned, and that there's further attempts to address the past encounters of overlapping interventions with an idea or emphasis of reducing duplication of efforts in responding to youth development challenges. But most importantly, it really creates a uniformed way and a uniformed approach of implementing youth development interventions. Now, those program facilitator in the main really are just at the level of the NYDA, the various instruments that are in place so that we are really able to meaningfully make an impact insofar as changing the material conditions that young people find themselves in. So it's safe to say that we alone cannot do this mandate. So we can't deliver on this mandate, and so we heavily do rely on forging strategic relationships so that the work of the agency is felt across the length and breadth of this country, particularly with an emphasis on ensuring that we reach the rural or youth residing in rural areas, youth that are marginalized, youth that are from your LGBTQIA+ communities, so we need to really be intentional and deliberate about that. But the ideas really that I have presented really are underscored in the work of the agency, and really want to encourage all young people to make use and take up these opportunities that are presented. And so we will then be able to dispel this myth and this notion that as young people, we are a lost generation. So program facilitator, those were just my parting shots. And thank you once again for affording us at the level of the NYDA, this platform to engage yourselves as young people. And we really will be encouraged and look forward to the fruitful deliberations and us really engaging in a festival of ideas with the notion that we need to be more solution orientated insofar as youth underdevelopment is concerned. So I will hand back to yourself, program facilitator, and thank you once again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ms. Luwaca, for your response. Those are some ideas, colleagues from the NYDA, on the challenges facing youth. I think what has been common throughout that response was the need to be intentional and deliberate in having a coordinated approach, also a collective commitment in empowering and development of youth, and also speaking to issues of policy and legislative frameworks and the configuration thereof. I'm supposed to move to the next speaker, but I'm just tempted to take, even if it's one or two hands before we lose Ms. Luwaca, because as I had indicated that she excused herself. Oh, and I see that there are two hands already. Ms. or Mr. Philani and Mr. Makaula, literally, I'll take those two hands, colleagues, because we are pressed for time. Thank you. Bongekile, please come through.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. My name is Bongekile Philani. I'm the board chairperson of the National Youth ICT Council. My question to Mr. Luwaca is about sustainability. As she said, she has mentioned about grants. So I wanted to understand, how are they making sure that the grants that they are giving out, the people that are the beneficiaries of this grant are running sustainable business? Because giving grants is another thing, but enterprise development is very important after giving grants, to follow up and make sure that the startups that they have given these grants are participating, or they are taking advantage of the opportunities that are in the markets. So I wanted to ask a question: how many from the 90 grants that they have issued, how many that have actually entered the market? Because that is very important. We need startups that are going to commercialize their services. We need startups that are going to commercialize their products, so that South Africa can then be positioned as a global hub of the services and products. Because young people cannot just render services within the local markets. The NYDA needs to start creating market linkages for them outside of South Africa, especially that now there's Africa Free Trade Area, which is advancing intra-Africa. So I wanted those questions of sustainability and commercialization, and how do they make sure that these startups or these grants that have been issued are really yielding the impact that we want in South Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bongekile. And Zwana, please briefly come through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly, sir. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. Good morning to everyone in the meeting. I will just make two comments on Asanda and later for Dr. Kambale, because he's not leaving. Chair, thank you so much once again for the platform. It's a pity that NYDA will leave us. We understand it; they've got a busy schedule, but I really do think that we needed more time to have more engagement with their office. Importantly, on the advancing from Dr. Kambale's presentation. Because any overhaul of checking where the country has been and where the province is, and where the country is and where the province is on youth development is incomplete without a full cooperation and participation by the NYDA. So if they have to leave now, I suppose we would have to have another time with them in particular. I'm saying so because our government has trusted NYDA to advocate for some of the work, which we found it to be problematic today if Dr. Kambale's presentation is anything to go by. And second of all, the speaker spoke about the national youth policy, which ought to guide the development of youth in the country, and the provinces are then feed from out of that national youth policy. And provinces like ours, they've got their provincial youth development plan. I happened to be part of one, which was the work that was ignited and supported by ECSECC around about 2014-15, which ended up to a provincial youth development plan, which was signed off in July 2015 and implemented thereafter. I'm highlighting that document, Chair and colleagues, simply to make a point that say the challenges that we see today are not without any trying by the government, by the provincial government. A fully fledged strategy was developed and implemented. But what we need to get close to because NYDA at a national and provincial level was involved in that process. The previous leaders of NYDA, your FHISER and others. However, it does come quite strongly even on what the speaker was alluding to, on what is now NYDA being responsible for, or what NYDA is being doing. Which brings me to a point of saying, what is it that can we expect from NYDA, and what is it that can we not expect from NYDA? Can NYDA be a vanguard and a watchdog to see youth development being realized in other in government spheres together with the private sector, or NYDA will in itself implement projects as listed by the speakers? As we all know that NYDA gets funding to run all these campaigns, to do that, their bursaries, their grants. Why is NYDA in that space? I'm not therefore expecting NYDA to excel in being a watchdog to government in all spheres of government, to see through it that youth development is one, mainstreamed. Youth development is institutionalized in all government departments and municipalities. I can ask now on one report, if at what stage is the national government departments, provincial government departments and municipalities have advanced in mainstreaming youth development? And what is the collective budget of youth development in all these spheres of government? I doubt I can get a solid report from NYDA office as we speak, because I strongly personally believe that NYDA is preoccupied with stuff that they ought to be monitoring and stuff that should be done by other agencies of government, and they stick on them being a watchdog. I strongly feel, Chair, that we need a sit down, because we can't take it anymore. We can't share the same complaint as NYDA. What's bothering me about youth development today in the Eastern Cape should not bother NYDA the same way, because we're different benches. We've got different mandates. If we need to sit down with them and see where there are gaps, so be it. Our South African youth policies are being used in other countries, and those countries are doing better. Our Minister of Sport support the Ministry of Sport and Youth in Lesotho to do better. That's why they can come to South Africa and use the stadiums if they are hosting big games. We've got our own policies, but somewhere, somehow, I do strongly feel, Chair, we need a sit down and we unearth all these problems that we've continuously been confronted with in our provinces and beyond. So PT, Chair, we don't have much time for NYDA now, but maybe a follow-up somewhere, somehow we would need, so that we can do an overcheck on what NYDA should be doing and should not be doing. And our proposal before they are taken forward, because in one of our sittings in 2016-17, a strong proposal, and NYDA together with other youth development, they supported the establishment of youth ministry, which is what is called now Youth and Older Persons Ministry. So some of the proposal, they can be advanced if we sit together, correct ourselves. If we are wrong on our facts, we correct those so that we can collectively move forward. Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, colleagues. Ms. Luwaca, I won't even take long. Please, if you can come through and before we let you go and respond to those issue of sustainability and grants and the mainstreaming of youth development and the role of NYDA in that regard. I see there are hands, colleagues. Ingati issue indaba, please can we just hold on a bit? Ms. Luwaca needs to leave, and we also need to accommodate other speakers. We will take another round shortly. Ms. Luwaca, please come through.
Can I be a rogue unit in your agenda, Chair, just to help Ms. Luwaca as she answers the last question?
Okay, all right.
Thanks a lot. No, it's just thanks for the privilege. It's just a matter that I wanted to clarify and just help her. We have had a session as the Eastern Cape Socio-Economic Consultative Council with NYDA at the beginning of this year, and I can assure colleagues in the platform that indeed all of the issues that Mr. Makaula is raising are being attended to. Amongst others, there are tasks that are accruing to us because of our research mandate, which the NYDA has agreed that we should be supporting them on, doing evaluative work, amongst which I suppose colleagues would have spoken about the Youth Development Index as part of that work that we should be continuing as the Eastern Cape Socio-Economic Consultative Council. So I just wanted to say that relationship that Mr. Makaula is talking about is already underway, and we should really be actioning that. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you so much, CEO. And Sis Asanda, please come through. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director or Program Facilitator. Yes, thank you also to the young people that have raised the questions. I will maybe just start from the last comment, and apologies, I did fall off the platform shortly due to connection issues. So I would have missed the bulk of that particular question, but I think I was able to grasp the essence, you know. One, I want to just clarify that NYDA won't be leaving this particular platform. It is just myself. Like I said, I'm at a school that we, at the level of the NYDA, would have or are committing to refurbish and paint. So that process has started, and they are waiting for me with the painting. But my team will still be on the platform and will remain to be able to respond and really engage young people on some of the issues, because we also don't want to stifle discussions. Precisely because we understand that, you know, youth development issues are burning issues, and we need to afford our fullest attention in that regard. So that I will then go back to the first question that was raised around, you know, the sustainability of our grants, and you know, I want to maybe just respond by saying that at our level, so we offer a range of your financial, like I spoke about earlier, a range of financial as well as your non-financial support and assistance. So linked to that will be ensuring that at the level of us dispersing the necessary grants, we don't just leave, you know, young people to fend for themselves, you know. So as part of, you know, the grant program, we offer then what then complements the financial assistance would be the non-financial. So we give them the necessary business management training. We offer a range of, you know, your life skills training and support to those particular businesses. We give we've got a mentorship program when we link prospective mentors with the relevant mentees. So because we precisely understand that, you know, the nature and the environment of sustainable businesses in this country is one that needs not just, you know, financial investment, but we need to go beyond that, because there are a range of issues as to why, for instance, small and medium enterprises don't succeed in the first year of operating, right? So we are alive to those realities. Hence, we you know, in responding to those particular realities, ensuring that we were able to give a range of that particular support. But also linked to that question was, you know, the relevant market linkages, and are we, you know, best positioned to assist those particular young people? I can confidently say that yes, we do provide, you know, the necessary linkages or exposure to the markets for these small or youth-owned enterprises, you know, precisely because we are, you know, alive to that reality that you can only do so much for a small business, but, you know, we can give them all the funding, but in the absence of them being able to access the relevant markets, you know, then that particular assistance becomes quite futile, and we're not necessarily going to yield the intended outcomes. So, but also the issue of ensuring that we expand markets. We are currently working on a strategy that will look at addressing precisely that. You know, I like the idea of you know, having young people accessing the Africa Free Trade area, right? And so where we are positioned at the level of the NYDA in government is precisely so that we are able to deposit those views to, you know, government, so that at a policy making and implementation that such inputs and views are affected. Yeah, I think those are the two. I'm just also a program facilitator, just trying to see there are some comments that were raised on the platform. There's a Roland who was asking or saying that they have been in an attempt to reach my office. Unfortunately, they've been unsuccessful. All right, I'm asked to respond to that. Okay, I will ask the team to just leave our contact details, Roland. Can you just liaise with the team? Micheline Mongai is on the platform. She will link you with those contact details. And then, okay, I think Ufezeka was also asking, or rather saying that it would assist NYDA to assess the causal factors on the low uptake by young people in the Eastern Cape on the services offered, e.g. grants, such that those can be attended to and addressed in coordinated manner by all relevant stakeholders. Yes, definitely, Fezeka. I think, you know, this issue of doing away with the silos mentality and uncoordinated way of working is precisely what we are working to fix now. At the level of the Eastern Cape province, for instance, there is the Sikhalo Youth Fund that is located in the Premier's office, right? And we are currently in discussions with that, with the office of the Premier, to say, you know, how can we best link what the office is currently doing with the work of the NYDA, so that there is a far greater footprint insofar as you know, youth development is related, but over and beyond just, you know, at a provincial level, equally even at a national level, we are, you know, constantly engaging relevant departments. You know, one of the departments that we work very closely with is your small business development. And through, you know, the minister's office, you know, we have been in discussions around how can we ensure that where there are particular initiatives and programs, for instance, you've got the entities, your CEDAs and CFAs. However, there has been a low uptake on youth or supporting youth establishments. So when we are engaging them, we are able to say, look, we've got a cohort of young people, young businesses that would need funding assistance that goes beyond our threshold. So can we leverage on that partnership and get CFA to fund and CEDA and so on? So those are just some of the interventions that are currently in place. But I hope I did not take too much of your time, Program Director, and I will hand back to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asanda. And colleagues, as Asanda has mentioned, that there are some colleagues from the NYDA who will remain in the platform. Maybe later on, also, I hope that they are noting the chats that are on the chat functionality, and they will respond to those issues. Asanda, I think we can let you go at this point. Thank you very much for agreeing to participate at this dialogue. It's clear that this is the topic today is a burning issue, and that we can never exhaust, you know, all discussions in 2 hours. Maybe a follow-up session is really important. So we will move on to the next panelist, Mr. Lisekho Madikane. Mr. Lisekho is a youth in the Eastern Cape. He started in the Eastern Cape, and he has worked as a freelance journalist of the Daily Dispatch and has been a PR intern for the BCM Metro. Lisekho, it seems you have been rooted in the Eastern Cape. What has informed your decision to remain in the Eastern Cape thus far? Was it because you find the Eastern Cape to be a great province with wonderful opportunities? Was it because you were too familiar with the Eastern Cape and comfortable being home? Would you ever leave the Eastern Cape one day? So I will take you, if you can come through to the platform and just take us through your situation. Over to you, Lisekho.
Thank you, Program Director. I hope I'm audible enough.
You are, thank you.
All right, thank you. Greetings to everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I believe such webinars or seminars are necessary and relevant, and also I hope that there are some HR practitioners or recruitment officers that were invited to this webinar and are listening and can maybe also advise on how to the right way of maybe applying for jobs or just give advice, mine is to just briefly share my view, raise concerns, and answer the few questions that you have recently raised. So as you have mentioned, I am Lisekho Madikane, 27 years old, and I am unemployed at the moment. I've been unemployed for a few months. I hold a national diploma in journalism from Nelson Mandela University and an advanced diploma in public relations management, and one would say it's just you've been unemployed for a few months, but the effect that it has on me, right, is it's too much. It's a lot. And to answer your question, why am I still here? I am willing to relocate. As a result, I'm concerned about the system in the Eastern Cape because in the few months that I've been unemployed, I have received 3 callbacks from interviews to 3 callbacks from different provinces, whereas I have not received anything in the Eastern Cape. I don't know how many CVs I've submitted in Bish, or rather the government departments. I do have a driver's license. I do have the qualification. I do have the experience because remember I've got 3 years. I had 2 years internship. I did a 2-year internship and the years internship. So I do have like your entry level experience, which is 3 to 5 years normally 3 years. But I am still unemployed, and this is frustrating, and I'm concerned as to maybe what is it that I am doing wrong, or what is wrong with the system, because now I'm in so much stress that I can't make any financial commitments, and I was thinking about how every time when I get a job, I have to actually go and start just a simple thing of a funeral policy. When I'm unemployed, it's obviously going to lapse because I'm not paying it. I have to start new policy every month. So it's really frustrating I am willing to relocate to another province, and I would move anytime. I am looking for jobs in other provinces. I am still here because we can now do things. I mean, we do things digitally now. I don't have to pack my things and go to Cape Town, to the Western Cape, or to another province in order for me to look for a job. We do things digitally now. So otherwise, I'm willing to relocate. I am done with the Eastern Cape. I would go to another province to look for a job, but I'm trying to cut the financial of moving to another province. And I'm currently doing my honors in communication, hoping that I am going to be employable after this. I'm just trying anything. Yes, doing my honors was in my furthering my studies was part of my plans, but I feel like now oh, sorry, I'm reading this. It's part of my plans, but it was not this year. But I'm trying to do anything that is going to help with the situation. Yes, COVID-19 may have worsened things, but it was the problem was there. And I believe that part of the cause is the oversupply of qualified people, right? You know, there are many people with who hold qualifications now, unlike in the past where it was very difficult to get into university. Now we've got NSFAS, we've got bursaries and all that. So yeah, there are many people that hold qualifications. And, you know, sometimes you ask yourself, did I study the right thing? But what is the right qualification? I'm not going to go and do medicine. I do not have the academic capacity to do that. And maybe I should, with me, my decision was to, I did journalism because I loved it. I wanted to be a journalist, you know. So I went with that. And so for me, I'm happy with the decision that I made of to studying journalism and PR because I love it. And I can't do something because remember in the past, I remember my parents when I was in matric, they said must go and do nursing or teaching. I've got friends who hold an honors degree in education, but they are still unemployed, you know. And another thing, Ms. Fokwebe, is that you know, I've been in the political space. Or environment rather. And I strongly believe, I'm sorry for this, but I strongly believe that in like local government, politicians are contributing to this, you know, they are contributing, and you'd find that in most offices, it's those people who are active with, in political parties, you know, that get the jobs. And the politicians fight, like telling us for the politicians everywhere, you know, in all those offices. So that's another thing. And then there's the issue of paying for jobs. I don't think I graduate this for 3-4 years and then still have to pay for a job. To me, it doesn't make sense. Otherwise, I am willing to move to relocate to another province should the opportunity arise. I am definitely relocating. And yes, and you know what, as the youth, to also add on to this part of the cause where I see the politicians are contributing. To answer the question, the first speaker, I don't trust local government, you know. So as part of maybe my recommendations would be that as the youth, maybe we should also think out of the box. We should consult recruitment officers and check. We should do our part, Nati, as to check, is my CV correct? Have I compiled it correctly for applying? And you know, and maybe for the vacant posts to be filled, you know, because I remember in my department there were many vacant posts, but they could not be filled because there was no budget for it, you know. And how is an office supposed to operate with a shortage of staff? And you know, but yeah, also maybe reduce. I don't know how far this went, but I remember the government saying they're reducing they're letting 5-year-olds retire, go on retirement, and they won't deduct the 4%. You know, maybe there would be a gap there. There would be space for maybe 5 or 6 people. Also, I'm also for the idea of involving the youth in policy formulation, and yeah. So, and in closing, Ms. Fokwebe, it is said that we are the most vulnerable. The youth is the most vulnerable when it comes to unemployment. So yeah, like I said, we should try and do our part when we do get the opportunity. Do your best, do that cover letter, attach those documents, you know. Maybe it's time, Nati, for us to think out of the box, find other ways of making ourselves employable, other means of surviving, you know, and not solely depend on government sources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisekho. Wow, okay, that is Lisekho. She just shared her experience and the situation that she finds herself in. And I mean, you can hear the emotion in her voice. And I think what caught me the most is when she said she is done with the Eastern Cape. And I'm sure this is a common cry throughout the youth. And so she is suggesting that there is an oversupply of qualified people in the system. I mean, why is that so? What is it that is being done about that? And she's further recommending that youth to think out of the box, suggesting that youth also in their spaces, they must be deliberate and intentional. I think it's conversations like this that will trigger change somewhere, somehow. Thank you so much, Lisekho, for sharing your experience with us. Next, colleagues, we will take Zulaikha Patel. Zulaikha is the head of policy and transformation at the South African Youth Advisory Council, and she's also a South African anti-racism activist. So I'll hand over to you, Zulaikha, and just share with us what are your perspectives coming from the South African Youth Advisory Council on this topic of today. Over to you, Zulaikha.
Good afternoon to everyone in the meeting. Thank you very much to the organizers for having me. My name is Zulaikha Patel and Program Director. With all due respect, apologies. However, we're not the South African Youth Advisory Council, the South African Youth Economic Council. And to share my perspective on youth disengagement, right? I believe that one of the main causes of our youth disengagement is the fact that youth have been excluded from the priorities of the country, have been excluded from means of opportunity, have been excluded from being a part of governance, and have been ultimately excluded from the greater society. And the youth voice is one that always goes unheard. And also the youth find themselves grappling with unemployment. The youth are the majority, however, they also the majority in our population demographics. However, it's the youth that's mainly unemployed, and it's not just any youth, it's Black youth from disadvantaged backgrounds, it's Black youth from poor backgrounds who are experiencing the unemployment, right? And it's youth that have been excluded by their socio-economic status, right? And as the South African Youth Economic Council, SAYEC, our view on youth unemployment is that one of the main reasons why we particularly founded our organization is that we saw the crisis in our country, that youth unemployment continues to rise at an all-time high. As in our country, we currently have one of the highest in the world youth unemployment statistic, right? And our view was that we wanted to wage a direct war on youth unemployment, and we also wanted to ensure that we are making opportunities available for the youth, and also ensuring that we are amplifying the voice of the youth, which mainly always goes unheard. And we are amplifying the voice of the youth, not just only to other youths, but we're amplifying the voice of the youth to corporates, the private sector, as well as in government. And what we also wanted to do was to ensure that we are opening spaces for young people to be able to access opportunity within spaces of government and opportunity within the corporate private sector. And so in thus, we've currently hosted 2 programs, because we're an organization that has only been founded this year. So we've currently hosted 2 programs in the beginning of the year, whereby our main focus was the energy sector and interrogating the Minister of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy Mr. Kwete Mantashe about opening opportunity for young people within the energy sector, right? And our recent program was the Youth Jobs in Bizo, which was mainly focused at targeting youth unemployment and targeting the statistic, as well as interrogating government as to what plans are put in place, because we're also aware of the budget that is allocated to young people, which is not even close to $1 billion, and you've allocated such a small minimal budget for the majority of the population, which isn't enough. And today we're actually hosting our third program for the year, which we're hoping to open opportunities for young people in terms of accessing the corporate sector. So we're hosting a program today. So the perspective of SAYEC on SAYEC on the youth disengagement in our country is that we're currently hoping to not only advocate for young people and become a voice of young people, but we're hoping to also influence the policy and make recommendations into policies pertaining to young people, because we understand the socio-economic circumstances which hold back young people from employment as well as opportunity, and we're hoping to also influence and make recommendations to policies. And our main mandate is that we want to wage a war against youth unemployment. And so throughout this year, we have a number of not only events, but community outreach programs, which are going to be focused on also upskilling the youth, because we are aware of the exclusion of young people from townships and rural areas, exclusion to skills development programs, and exclusion as they are not being engaged with at all, which contributes to their disengagement as well, which I always say is one of the causes why young people never actually want to vote, because nothing is actually done with young people present. Things aren't done for young people with them present, and which is why young people disengage from the politics of the country and disengage from the country at large, because they've already systematically been excluded and disengaged by the system already. So our planned program of action is to empower youth-owned businesses, as well as assist youth business owners to access more funding and access opportunities to grow their businesses, as well as our second plan would be creating opportunities for unemployed graduates, partnering with the private corporate sector to create opportunities for unemployed graduates. And we've also got thirdly some ongoing research and policy work. And then fourthly, we want to ensure that we are supporting learners, and this is primarily because we cannot tackle youth unemployment without ensuring that one of our priorities is ensuring that young people do matriculate, pupils matriculate, and ensuring that those conditions in which they strive to obtain a matric certificate are conditions that support their needs and support them to be able to make it till the end of their high school schooling career, right? So one of the programs that we've got upcoming will be a mentorship program where our first intake is going to be about 35 learners from Soweto, where we're going to have a mentor, one person we're going to select from the energy sector, and we're going to select 35 young pupils who are in grade 11 and matric who wish to enter who wish to study a degree that is related to the energy sector and aspire to enter that sector at a later stage. And that group of young people will have one mentor that will do a program of 8 weeks with them, which will include even site visits, and will also include us assisting them and supporting them to ensure that they have the right necessary resources they need, to ensure that they obtain the necessary academic marks that they need to obtain to be able to be eligible for the degree they are aspiring into. So that is a bit about who we are as the South African Economic Council, and we are a council that is very open to engaging with young people. So I will also share our website as well as contact details with the event organizers, should there be any queries about the organization. So as an organization, we're hoping to also engage with young people who need assistance, and we're hoping to be a pillar for young people to be able to find assistance and also find guidance to the necessary resources they may need. I'll leave it there for now and just hand back to the program director. As I do need to also leave a bit early as we're hosting a program today as well. So I need to make sure I make it to the venue on time. So I'll just hand back to the program director.
Thank you so much, Zulaikha. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Zulaikha Patel from the South African Youth Economic Council. Thank you for correcting me there. Zulaikha coming in very strongly on issues of youth and how youth has been excluded socially, economically, you know, and just being engaged on issues pertaining to them. And also just saying that the youth, the voice of the youth is always unheard, and yet the policies and the programs in place are for the youth, and there is no space to influence the policies that pertain to youth there. Thank you so much, Zulaikha. I will now invite to the platform Qhamisa. The panelists, please, if you may note the chats and maybe just attempt to respond also on the chat. It is a live chat, just to also to keep to issues of time. It would be nice that we drop some other inputs on the chat box. Next, I will take Qhamisa Tengile. She's also still a youth. She's a youth development enthusiast, a political activist, and an entrepreneur. She is the current president of the Eastern Cape Youth Chamber of Business, which unites young entrepreneurs for continued networking, capacity building, mentoring, and positive competition. She also funded the TikTok Masitete Center. Qhamisa, please just take us through your perspective as the president of the South African Youth Chamber of Business. The platform is yours. If you may come through, please. Thank you.
Thank you, my lady. Just to confirm, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Greetings to everybody. This is Qhamisa Tengile from the Eastern Cape Youth Chamber of Business. I would like to share my greetings to everyone from ECYCB. We're very excited to be here, and of course, minding that the time has lapsed. Therefore, we just need to ensure that we are as quick as possible. We thank you, by the way, for the invitation to this webinar, and we were excited to witness young people and, of course, elderly that are in the development and economic spaces, bringing solutions that we can implement in our different spaces to ensure that development indeed becomes a reality for the forgotten young people. Those young people that do not have a voice, they depend on us, and therefore we're excited to see such happening. Thank you so much for that. To get straight into my brief presentation, it's going to be structured into 3 points. In case someone happens to have signal issues, just know that I was talking about three things. One, the state of young people of South Africa right now. Two, the root of the tree. We cannot fully destroy the tree until we understand and study its root. What is the root cause of the state of young people in South Africa? Under that, I'll be looking at the voting apathy or political apathy and the system that we're all subjected to. Lastly, I'll be looking and exploring possible solutions to the dilemma that we're facing as a country. Straight into it, colleagues. Firstly, discussing the state of young people in South Africa. Young people are gradually losing hope in the education system. They've witnessed their elder or older siblings going to school, graduating, and still having to come back and roam the village streets. What then should motivate them to go to school? Secondly, young people do not know their history, where we come from. We do not fully comprehend the sacrifices that were made on the Black person's account. This is to say, we need to find time to study our history. What happened? Today we're celebrating Youth Month. What exactly happened leading to us celebrating Youth Month? What are the sacrifices that were made ensuring that a young person of a black skin, Qhamisa Tengile, is able to walk into the union buildings without being stopped? What led to that? And thirdly, the government recommended a few years ago that all learners in schools study history, so as to ensure that everyone comes out of grade 12 at least having an understanding of where we come from, as opposed to a selective few learners who study history because they choose to. So there was this history plus life orientation integration that was set to take place from 2023. I do not think that is the case because currently we're not hearing anything about that. But in our short spaces, or sorry, in our small spaces and in our corners and sectors, I'd like to urge that we ask about that. Where is that hold held? When are we going to know how young people in school are going to know where we come from? So young people need to be taught where we come from, because when you know where you come from, you can then determine wars that you're supposed to fight. When you know where you come from, you can easily determine where you are to go, taking into consideration that your forefathers have fought certain battles, they have failed here and there, so then it is your duty or my duty to take up the bait and move forward. As would say that we've got freedom, but the freedom is of a low quality. What then becomes our responsibility in that instance? Currently, we celebrate Youth Month and, of course, June 16 by virtue. How do we, as young people of 2022, commemorate the current historical victories? Do we take such days as days to, have fun, drink alcohol, or do we sit down and analyze how better can we enhance youth development in our day and age? Simultaneously, how do we run or fight for more victories? The spirit of those who stood for something, and that was political freedom and democracy, should propel us to stand for something today. The youth of 2022, what is our elephant in the room? I think that's the question that we all need to ask ourselves. What is the elephant in our room? And I think as we all agree in this setting, it is that young people are facing a deadly wave of unemployment. So that sums up the state of young people in our communities. Now, point number 2, the root of the tree, or rather the root cause of young people having this state that we agree on. The general elections in 2014 was noted for being the first national election in which young South Africans, mostly those born after 1994, the born freezers would say, were expected to participate for the very first time. It is argued that the participation of young people in the election in 2014 was critical for 2 reasons. One, it remained a formal and legalistic way for people who have become of age politically to have their voices heard. Secondly, It was the first opportunity for this generation of South Africans to establish their political identity as active and engaged citizens, to fulfill their constitutional obligations and exercise their democratic and civil rights, that is to vote. Now, the apartheid system that our forefathers or our fathers were subjected to was a system where our people, the Black people, had no voice. Today we have a voice, but are we as young people utilizing that voice is the question. The low voter turnout in that election, particularly among youth, was a wake-up call for South Africa. Analysts suggest that vote casting on polling day is only a part of a bigger and broader democratic process. The process is that political participation cannot be reduced to vote casting alone. There are many ways to participate in political and electoral processes. For example, 1, attending community meetings or writing to and communicating with an elected official. Not long ago, we had ward councillors elected in each and every single ward. That is the closest member of government that you have. Why don't we consult them regarding the issues that we have, the roads, the unemployment, the youth-owned entities that survive without funding? We need to consult our ward councillors. They are paid government entities that are supposed to be servicing our communities in the most and closest local level. A well-known slogan goes, "Uzoyithola kanjani ehlele koneni." Youth in South Africa remain actively engaged in various significant government processes such as service delivery, protests, community demonstrations, and protests on university campuses. Although not necessarily new, this form of unconventional engagement to use addresses various social, political, and economic issues that concern youth. A good example is the Fees Must Fall movement that gripped university campuses across South Africa in 2015, leading to policy shifts on the part of government on higher education financing. These alternative spaces offer conducive platforms for political organizing. The importance of these platforms will become more crucial as more people get access to social media tools. Young people should ask tough questions on these platforms on whether their chosen leaders bring innovative ways to stem the tide against the phenomenon or the deterioration, poor governance, and the breakdown of public compact. So our access to social media should not be one to say young people are not voting and therefore that's it. Young people are vocal on social media, and that is a fact that we can utilize to grow even our political standing. But of course, it is important that young people do exercise, do practice vote casting, because it is your voice as a young person. You get to choose a leader that will lead you. Of course, there are other issues that are affected or rather linked to vote casting, but ours as young people is to play our role and to ensure that we do away with voting apathy. Let's ensure that our voice is heard and that we contribute to the quality of leaders that we produce as a society. Number 2, the system which we are all subjected to. We are all members of a system. We're born to a system. You are born and you're expected to go through creche. We're expected to go through primary, secondary studies, tertiary, workplace, get married, grow old, eventually die. We're subjected to cycles and systems, and we cannot run away from that. Now, the role of government is to ensure that there is a community in which everyone can thrive. South Africa is the most unequal society in the world. The role of government is to create an environment where everyone has a fair chance to thrive. Now, when we speak of a youth that is getting lost, when we speak of a youth that is getting lost, or when we speak of unemployment, who then is our audience? As we speak, who should be listening? Is it the young people? Is it the system? Who is the perpetrator here? Can we tell someone who has been a victim of rape not to get raped, or should we tell a rapist not to rape, is the question. Now, in my view, the perpetrator of this entire dilemma that we find ourselves in is the system. The system that we find ourselves subjected to is not fair. Education, as good as it is unattainable to many, as Dr. Kambale Kavese had accounted to later on in his presentation, in his presentation. So we need to understand that we are subjected to a system that does not, or rather that is not conducive for the growth and development of young people. Furthermore, we're subjected to market-driven economics. We're told don't interfere with the market. Supply and demand will regulate itself. This is the system that is used by South Africa, Europe, and others. I want to say this clearly. This is a cover-up for capitalism. Because as soon as we're told not to interfere, it means then there is someone who is shaping everything, sitting in some office, ensuring that, okay, this plays out this way, this plays out that way. And in doing all of that, young people of South Africa are being disadvantaged. We're crying for an inclusive society. We're crying for a society that's going to accommodate young people in workspaces. We are saying we are against the inactivity of young people in the economic space. But I want to say this very boldly that the separation and the classism that we experience is deliberate. If our system dare becomes inclusive, it would mean that the benefiting minority is injured. We've got a benefiting minority which is in decision-making positions. As much as we may make protests, cry out, talk on social media, the question is, are those in power going to respond? Are they maybe benefiting to this current system? I want to believe that many are. This calls to all who are elected to positions, whether it be governance or leadership or whatever. It calls to all that we need to ensure that our people are represented well. We need to ensure that the people that have entrusted us, the community that has voted us into power, we prioritize once we're in power. We've got a situation of leaders who get into power and forget how it happened that they got into power. They get into power, they buy cars, they buy houses, and our roads, our facilities remain damaged. So we need to, as we cry, understand that those that are in power in most of the cases would not dare respond to our cries because it would mean they are injured. So there are people that there are people that benefit in the current system that we have. The question is, what then happens? Do we continue crying? How do we influence this change? Deeply understanding that even those that we're going to write letters to are beneficiaries of this same system. I wanted to outline those few realities, colleagues. I'm going to now proceed to the solutions that we want to suggest as the Eastern Cape Youth Chamber of Business. Number one, of course, we are a stakeholder in the corporate space, and of course, we would suggest that young people get up and start up businesses. Any organization concerned with addressing the devastating South African employment issue should have enterprise development front in mind. Employment cannot be sustainably addressed if new businesses do not come into being to absorb young people into meaningful and productive activities. There is an organization called Youth Employment Service, YES, in short. Their mission is to transform South Africa's youth into active economic participants, which goes as far as simply placing individuals in work positions. Additionally, the organization seeks to address the root causes of unemployment by creating new economic pathways and work opportunities for the youth by strategically driving enterprise development in peri-urban areas and densely populated township communities. In functional communities, the contribution of small business to employment and GDP is well over the 85% mark. New small businesses can absorb and employ entry-level and semi-skilled workers more readily and in greater numbers than large or more established companies in the first economy. We know and are familiar with the fact that as much as young people may qualify, when they enter, or rather when they strive to enter the workspace, they're going to be told or expected to have experience. Therefore, we need small businesses which would be able to employ entry-level and semi-skilled workers. The data shows us that past 5 years existence, these established first economy businesses generally require higher skilled workers and tend to efficiency-driven automated models to be competitive, which leaves semi-skilled and unskilled youth further behind. In comparison, South Africa's SMMEs currently account for some 47% of employment and contribute just over 20% to GDP, pointing to the opportunity for exponential growth within the sector. These figures give evidence to the economic urgency and importance of transferring entrepreneurial skills and business experience to our country's youth. Contributions and investments towards supporting youth entrepreneurs and driving enterprise development not only have profound impact at the individual level, but also have a multiplier effect on job creation and economic growth. Now, as the Eastern Cape Youth Chamber of Business, we stand with our arms open, ready to accept any youth-owned business that would like to join a community of young people that are change makers in the space of economic stability. We want to bring young people to this space where youth businesses are shaped, empowered, and where there is good networking. Youth-owned businesses are invited to affiliate with Eastern Cape Youth Chamber of Business, and of course, you can check our offers via email at info. Our email is info@ecycb.co.za. I repeat, info@ecycb.co.za. That is the first solution that I'm bringing. Number one, let's get young people to start up businesses. But of course, we may get young people to start up businesses, but these same businesses are going to need funding. These same businesses are going to need the market to be opened. I can say, young people, start up farm, but who's going to buy the cabbages? The market must be open and ready to receive cabbages from these young people. And of course, the young people must be capacitated to ensure that when they do get a 10 apply a big company such as Shoprite or Boxer Superstores, they are able to.
Qhamisa, can I just ask that we move to wrap up, my dear, please. We're looking at the time now.
Okay,
we can
1
just
minute, please.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Lastly, we need all hands on deck. There's no way that only businesses will be able to resolve this issue. We're going to need everyone, every stakeholder to come on board. We are Christians, and therefore there's no way that we can close the conversation without, or rather this contribution, without addressing even the mere contribution of Christianity. When Jesus in Matthew 14 verse 16 to 21 was teaching 5,000 people, the disciples say at the end of the day, "Hey, Master, it's late. These people are probably hungry. Send them away." Jesus says, gather them. Let us give them food. We as a community need to stop, or rather, we need to do away with this send them away mentality and rather gather people so that they are empowered. Young people need skills. Young people need jobs. Young people need to be taught how to fish as opposed to be given one fish for one supper. Let's ensure that we bring people together as opposed to sending them away so that they fend themselves and eventually stand the risk of dying. Thanks, my leader.
Thank you so much, Qhamisa, for that passionate, you can hear the passion in her voice, imploring us to look at the root causes behind the state the youth of today find themselves in, historical issues, and how better can we advance youth development. Colleagues, it's clear that we are going to go over time. I'm just asking that you be a little bit patient. Maybe we'll take 15 minutes over time, and I'll just move on straight to Professor Philani Moyo. He's currently the director at FHISER, the Forte Institute for social and economic research. Prof. Moyo has previously conducted a research which is relevant to today's seminar actually on livelihoods and the rural youth poverty questions, rethinking capabilities, local youth visions and policy options in South Africa and India. And another one on youths in the craft sector, socio-economic opportunities and challenges in the Eastern Cape and Western Cape. Prof. Moyo, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, facilitator, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by acknowledging the fertile groundwork that has been laid by the previous speakers, Dr. Kambale, Asanda, Lisekho, Zulaikha, and Qhamisa. I think they've touched on so many policy issues that I would not want to reiterate. I will therefore limit myself to one specific issue related to higher education and training in South Africa, and how the higher education and training environment is one of the drivers of the current youth unemployment that we are facing. And I've chosen that particular angle because when I read the report by Dr. Kambale and colleagues, they cited one respondent who said she lacks relevant skills and this is exacerbating her poverty condition. Things could be better if she had the desired qualifications and skills. Close quote. I think there were 2 or 3 more other similar citations in the report, specifically relating to the nature of qualifications and skills that graduates have. And therefore, my submission today is guided by this issue of higher education. And my main argument is that the current system of higher and tertiary education in South Africa is one of the major drivers of unemployment, poverty, and deprivation among the youth, not just in the Eastern Cape, but nationally. This is precisely so because the current model of higher education is focused more on theoretical reasoning, theoretical teaching, and simple community service that does not really speak to the ideals and desires of the youth. And because of these problems embedded in the higher education system, consequently, the majority of the graduates we have from our universities and from our TVET colleges, they have mastered academic theory, but very little practical skills required in the broader economy. And for that reason, it is therefore not surprising that thousands of graduates in this country, in this province, are unemployed and unemployable. So for me, the problem is not lack of graduates, but the type of graduates that this country has. And when I mention this point, I'm reminded of a joke that used to circulate in the late 90s to the early 2000s, specifically relating to the number and type of graduates that countries like Ghana and Nigeria were producing. And the joke was that if you threw a stone in the streets of Accra in Ghana or Abuja in Lagos in Nigeria, there was a 90% chance that you're going to hit a university graduate that was unemployed and unemployable. And that joke, which is not funny at all, now applies to the South African context. So to address this graduate problem, I am therefore putting forward 5 key points worth reflecting on. I don't want to say they are policy proposals, but rather 5 key points worth reflecting on. And the first one is this. I'm arguing that the higher and tertiary education system in this country must be reconfigured and geared towards innovation and industrialization. Secondly, I'm saying this policy shift will require that universities and TVET colleges broaden their scope so that their mandate as higher education institutions is anchored on 5 pillars, namely the traditional teaching, the traditional research, engaged scholarship, innovation, and industrialization. So you can see that the 2 key things that I'm arguing for there in the broadening of the scope is the addition of innovation and industrialization. And you'll begin to understand why as I move forward. And I'm also arguing that such a change in the thrust of universities and TVETs will be aligned to global technological and industrial developments, specifically the 4th industrial revolution that is characterized by innovation and high-end or cutting-edge industrial advancement. And fourthly, I'm arguing that this new system of higher and tertiary education will result in teaching philosophy changes, specifically shifting from theory to practice. In other words, we should do less theoretical teaching just to produce graduates, but rather move more towards practice-based university graduates that will leave universities and TVETs with skills that are relevant to the South African economy. And lastly, why am I arguing like this? I'm arguing like this because early this year, in February 2022, the Department of Employment and Labor, in partnership with State SA, as well as the Department of Home Affairs, reviewed and released what is called a critical skills list of South Africa. That critical skills list is essentially an outline of areas in the economy where there is a serious shortage of either university graduates or TVET or college graduates. And some of the skills that are listed there, most of them are in the physical sciences, expectedly. You know, they range from actuarial scientists, data scientists, software developers, civil engineers, chemical engineers, but they also include fields in the social sciences and humanities, for example, like your university lecturers, in the management and commerce field, your auditors, tax professionals, as well as in DIY sectors, the do-it-yourself sector, the hands-on approach. And here I'm talking about skills like being a draftsperson, being an air conditioning mechanic, being a refrigeration mechanic, being a lift mechanic, and lastly, being a simple plumber. These are skills that have been highlighted by these departments as lacking the required human capital. So, given these skills, so what does it mean for this country going forward? It means that in trying to address the youth unemployment problem in this country, there should be concerted efforts towards directing people getting into universities and colleges towards pursuing degrees and diplomas in these critical skills career paths. Because we know, we have the evidence that those career paths are open. There's a shortage of people in those career paths. It does not help for people to enroll in universities on the basis of passion, on the basis of something that they've been dreaming about. You go to varsity, you enroll for theology, you enroll for social work, you enroll for law because you've always dreamt of being this top advocate. When we know that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people with those degrees that are roaming the streets. So I want to conclude by saying that by pursuing or by changing the higher and tertiary education sector in this country, then enough room will be created for the creation of a human capital base, for the creation of a human capital base that will be able to fill in critical skills gaps that have been identified by different departments in this country. And there's a parting shot on that issue of critical skills. right now, as I speak to you, the Department of Home Affairs is issuing critical skills visas from people from different countries because the market simply does not have enough people to fill in these positions that I've just mentioned here. So I want us to reflect on that as we close the discussion. Let's reflect on the issue of the type of graduates that we have, the critical skills that this economy needs, and how young people can be directed towards those critical skills areas so that they do not just go to university for the simple reason of just being a graduate, but that will then walk away being unemployable. I'll end there, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Prof. Moyo. That was Prof. Moyo, ladies and gentlemen, stressing that we do not have a lack of graduates. However, it's the type of graduates that we have. And then key to reflect on is the configuration and to gear the higher education institutions and the TVET towards innovation and industrialization. I think that is basically what Prof. Moyo, the message that he was driving at. Lastly, from our panel of speakers, colleagues, we have Mr. Sikhonza Madasa. He is the Provincial Executive Committee member of the South African Youth Council in the Eastern Cape and Chairperson of the Student Committee at University of Fort Hare, Faculty of Commerce and Management. Mr. Madasa, if you can just take us through the perspective of the South African Youth Council and on youth disengagement and possible solutions. The platform is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, facilitator and the program director. My name is Mr. Sikhonza, not Mr. Sikhonza. Let me first no, Madasa. Here, as the South African Youth Council, I want to first argue that although it may be termed as disengagement, we do not agree that it's literally disengagement, but rather we have just given up as young people, because we would be disengaging only if we have been engaged before. But the reality of the matter here, when we talk about the Eastern Cape, is that the young people were never involved in anyhow. Young people might be disengaging and leaving the Eastern Cape because they were never involved. So it's some sort of giving up in a way. You know, there's a guy called the founding father of the United States of America, Ben Franklin. I want to quote him when he said, "Tell me, I forget. Teach me, I remember. Involve me, and I learn." Close quote. When this is the thing, we just need, as young people, to be involved in the Eastern Cape. We can't be blamed of being disengaging when we were never involved. So that's where I wanted to start. So there is the nature of the struggles of young people that are facing here in the Eastern Cape has become increasingly complex and complicated. So there is sufficient information of the nature of these challenges. So we would rather not spend much time discussing these challenges in platforms like this, but rather discuss the solutions that we hope to see, so as to see the problem that we now today term it as youth disengagement end. So first and foremost, we have got leaders here in the Eastern Cape, be it leaders of government, be it leaders everywhere, old people that are so much passionate in discussing youth development matters without even involving young people. You know, today we're in this platform because it's the month of youth, the youth month. You know, we'll only be involved in those webinars and meetings because this is a time for youth month, and then it's going to end there. When they next month when they discuss youth matters, they will be alone speaking about youth development without even involving the youth itself. So in order for us to not disengage, we must be involved. We must be involved everywhere. We must be involved in government. We must be involved in policy making, because the reality of the matter is that we are going to enter a phase whereby we are going to say nothing for us without us. That's the reality of the matter. And the reality of the matter is that the way things are here in the Eastern Cape, young people are being pushed in the corner. They are being sidelined. You know what is the danger of that? The danger of that is that you are going to face a problem of young people reiterating. You know, when they reiterate, or when we reiterate, is that we are going to push for a generational takeover. Once we come to that stage of a generational takeover, we as young people wanting to take everything from the old ones. Now, we are going to somehow, if ever someone reads the international history, might understand that that thing of generational takeover, it does not really work somehow, because the real matter is that we need each other here. We need these people to think, provide solutions, come up with their experience, and we need us with our fresh minds to think also, but most importantly, our fresh energy to implement what is big, because we've got all these good policies here in South Africa. Each and every organization has got all these good policies, but they lack, all of them lack energy to implement, because they want to do it themselves as old people, not involve us. So that's why we are saying that as the youth here in the Eastern Cape, as the South African Youth Council, we are not disengaging, but we were never involved from the onset. So as part of the solutions that we need here, we need to cut the red tape. You know, we have got all these long processes. You go to this Scalo Youth Fund. When you get there, you find out even the process for you to get funding will take up to 6 months. Shorten those processes. Give young people a chance to expose themselves, because they have got a capacity to do so. Boost the NYDA budget. You know, when you have given young people funding for whatever businesses that they start up, you need to organize them. You need to put in place legislation that will make sure that automatically they will have an automatic market. For example, if ever, for example, I'm from Ngwabone, we've got 2 schools there. And then you will have your government funding a co-op by young people for a sewing one, but does not create a market for them. But if ever we had a coordinated government that is going to organize everything that is there in business, we would have said that these people, because they are good at sewing, they must also pattern the uniform for these schools and then go and regulate those schools or engage them, or however you do it, that uniform in upper school and nithenga koJombo and so on and so forth. Nithenga kwaBanga. Now you have funded the business and then created the market for it, so that business does not fail anyhow. We need every department to be involved in this, in youth development. It can't be that we have got all these departments, but and you find out that the youth development will be located maybe in President's office, or in the case of the Eastern Cape, you'll only find it in the office of the Premier and nowhere else. What about the other departments? What are they doing for young people? What are they doing by young people? What are they doing by this crisis? We need every department to be involved. We need that if ever I got a Scalo Youth Fund, I'm producing shoes and so on and so forth, go and tell the police department that go and purchase some police to those companies that you have funded. So this thing does not need too much English and so on and so forth and too many policies. You just need to implement, organize what we have done, and then they are going to be successful. In the interest of time, let me just stop there. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Madasa. Yeah, and this I think the message is very clear that young people have given up, and that how can you disengage if you were never involved? I think that is a very strong message. Ladies and gentlemen, those are some facts and some views and perspectives on youth disengagement and possible solutions. Are we at risk of experiencing a lost generation of youth? I think the debate here essentially is about the conditions of youth and what to do about them. I would just like 10 minutes literally, just to invite 1 or 2 from our participants to come through, just to get some input or some comment or some whatever it is that they want to say, just 10 minutes before we close the session. We're almost going to close, colleagues. Thank you for those that are still in the platform, and thank you for your patience. I see that the conversation also is ongoing on the chat box. Panelists that are still around, please, if you can note those comments on the chat box. Yes, anyone, just 2 or 3 hands, 10 minutes very briefly, please, if you may come through. Ms. Makwati?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. Chair, I'm not going to repeat what I've written in the chat box. For me, it's just to say, Chair, I think that this dialogue is very important for the country, especially for the Eastern Cape. One, because if we are discussing a lost generation of young people, knowing, of course, that young people are a key to creating a better future in any society, it means that we are losing out on how our country should be structured in future. And if all the challenges that were presented here, Chair, are not holistically addressed, because each and every one of each challenge is correlated to another challenge, and in a coordinated manner, as one of the speakers from NYDA indicated, I think we're going to be facing a challenge for the generation that we are grooming whilst when we're not in the country. And secondly, Chair, I think Dr. Kambale indicated that in the Eastern Cape, we're having young people that are out migrating at a rate of 10% over a period of 7 years. And again, if a concerted effort is not made by the Eastern Cape province to address that challenge, working, of course, with our counterparts from national, the likelihood is that if that trend continues, the Eastern Cape could become a white elephant that is only living people that are of old age. Otherwise, I made my comments in the chat box, Chair, and I believe the speakers perhaps might also be able to respond to those if there's a need to do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other hand. Anyone else that would love to come in? Otherwise, then I can close the session. Going once. Okay, I have two hands, Mr. Luvoyo Musana and Papama. Those are the two hands. Please come through. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Chair. My apologies. You might be hearing another sound in the background. I'm actually double parked in a cabinet committee meeting because I felt I should not lose this session. Let me make just 3 points rather, not two. I think the first point is from our side as ECSECC, we need to proceed with a bit of speed with respect to the project on the Youth Development Index, which is the work that we started with the Nelson Mandela University when they started the Youth Development Convention work. The reason for that, for saying that, I think for me, they identified 5 domains that we highlighted as the domains that would be within the index for specifically, ensuring that we have the composite index of the various indicators dealing with youth development. I think they need to be pursued, and this discussion that we have had today, even though it might have slanted quite a lot towards employment and opportunities, but there are still, including education, that there are still issues that relate to youth health and well-being that need to be focused on, and especially as well the civic duty aspect. I think Prof. Moyo does talk to it in some way when he talks about the need for redesign of our curricula at the higher education level. Because indeed, if any greater success can be achieved for us in the country and also in the province, we need to be deliberate about how we ensure youth involvement. I'm talking about now young people who are in education, their involvement in community activities, and that they are very course and training programs should from the outset be putting them in the coalface of working with community development projects. And I'm sure that would also help to take away the work of putting young people to do research work that is quite, abstract and dealing with theoretical issues in other places of the world. So that's the first one. I think that assignment would really be helpful to persuade and ensure that we get that active index and with its regular reviews. Because then it will provoke these different sectors to stand up into being accountable about what they're doing. The second thing I just wanted to say is that we have a plethora of platforms, organizations, formations that are involved in this work. And I'm not going to be meaning by the point I'm making that we need to have some, centralization of these, but I think there is a need for some cohesion, a cohesiveness rather, and a coordination and collaboration amongst them. Because it is out of that that we will be able to know who is doing what and what are their experiences, and then be able to report and reflect on those appropriately. For example, currently at government, the tendency is really to talk about the government projects that are funded by government, but their scalability and their ability to reach out generally to the greatest numbers of young people at every corner of the province is not being realized. But if we were to join up, with others, I'm quite certain that we would be making a greater impact. And there was, as I listened to the different colleagues who were presenting, I'm getting the sense that there's quite a sense of very great work that is done out there. But if we were to be able to have better coordination, particularly ensuring that there are best compacts between government, private, and as well as the non-governmental institutions of young people that have been talking today, I'm sure we'll be able to see quite a great impact on the work we're doing, and including, as I've said, scaling up the work in many different ways. But the point also that Prof. Moyo has raised about innovation, the current innovation incubators we have in the province, if they were then to tap on this coordinated, cohesive group, they will certainly be getting better, ideas of what sort of innovations are needed in what sector. And I'm sure we'll then be able to help them get the influence into what they design as innovative projects, and also from the entrepreneurs themselves. I'm going to also, in this regard, suggest that from this webinar, the Human Resources Development Council of the province, which is also here at ECSECC, must take to appreciate this aspect around innovation and industrialization, as Prof raised, and start in its interface with these different stakeholders, because they are already in the council, and start to appreciate as to how to then programmatize this work. And I know the working group of the council is already seized with the work that Prof was talking about, but its visibility might not be, quite well appreciated. And lastly, Chair, I think probably in terms of the different structures, and it goes back to the second point, in terms of the different structures that exist for youth coordination, I know you would have structures called your youth councils, which I know exist even at a district level. There is an attendant responsibility to them to ensure that they search and find all of these formations that we have had speaking today, and ensure that they are within those youth councils and are primarily, for me, participating in the development planning work that takes place within government and at all spheres of government, most importantly, the local government sphere. Because the success of these entrepreneurs that have been talking today is going to be about what they do in respect of the development work and development projects that are taking place within that sphere. And innovation that is needed in that space requires the ideas of young people, both in shaping that in respect of, fetching the future that they are aspiring and desiring as young people, and ensuring that in the municipalities, that thought is brought about and designed into the plans, the programs, the projects that are meant to be embedded in these integrated development plans of municipalities. I just wanted to make those three contributions, and I think all of these three contributions are actually saying a statement to us as ECSECC, and I'm not meaning that we should be in this statement, Ms. Fokwebe, we should be establishing a youth desk, but I guess it says a statement that we should be also ourselves coordinating the work we do with youth, and specifically being deliberate in ensuring that our programs are very specific about how at every point of our work we ensure youth involvement. I just wanted to end with that point, and I'm sure internally you can have the discussions to how we then ensure this youth focus and advocacy within ECSECC. I know at some point when we started the discussion with Nelson Mandela University, we even went further to say some of us within ECSECC should really be starting to realize this aspect I'm raising, but I think it with time it actually evaporated or dissipated without us realizing what we were looking at. Thanks a lot, and again thanks a lot for a very profound session, because indeed this is all about fetching our future, and we need to do so with all the deliberate, conscious effort. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Faku, for that contribution, and especially towards a way forward for this session. Sisokanye Put Papama, please come through literally 1 minute.
Thanks, Chair. I always worry when we get sanctioned, but I understand we've run out of time. I want to appreciate all the views that have been shared here today. I just want to say, Chair, I think we must also just remember that some of these things are not rocket science. Some of the interventions that need to take place are already existent. Some of our young people are doing amazing things on the ground, but they're just not finding the right doors. You know, I always say the Eastern Cape has a big, one simple intervention that it needs to get right towards unlocking some of its potential. And it's to get people who are in positions of authority and who are officials to just answer emails, you know. Something as basic as that, if we got that right in the next year, we would actually shift the pendulum quite sufficiently. I'll give you a simple example. You've got a situation here where a DFI goes and makes a pronouncement that it's going to host a film festival and calls it the Eastern Cape Film Festival. You've got a group of young entrepreneurs who have been running an Eastern Cape Festival for a number of years now, seeking support from the various institutions in the province and getting help from some, but needing some of that injection to bolster their efforts. Now, it deflates the efforts of a young person to wake up tomorrow and see that the very same DFI that is supposed to be bolstering your efforts is now effectively your competitor. So it's those basic things, is to say, if you are here to assist young people in the ecosystems that they are working in, surely you should be looking to them and saying, what interventions have you got underway, and what can we do for strategic public-private partnerships to bolster your efforts in particular direction? So I think there's something there that we need to fix in our inboxes in the province so that people can actually read and acknowledge people's emails, their proposals, their submissions, and actually work with the people who are already doing things. So I don't think the interventions are some things that are going to come from outside of the province or fall from the sky. I think the projects exist. I think sufficiently the thinking has been done about where we would like to see our province, but we seem to be the ones who are sleeping on the wheel. And as Madasa said, the time is not on our side, you know. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Puti. Ladies and gentlemen, I think here the fundamental interest and the objectives is to see a youth that is proactive and that is well equipped and capable. We want to see a youth that will become positive change agents for their own selves, for their own lives, and I think also for the greater community in which they reside in. Lastly, I think we want to see those programs and plans, that support and mentor youth and that support entrepreneurship as well for youth. And those policies, a lot was said about reconfiguration of policies in this platform. Your policies on social welfare policies, education policies, especially relating to curriculum. There's a chat up on the inbox that says, abantwana, they choose the subjects and they do those subjects and they don't even know into yobana bazifundela ntoni na. So I think that the issue of curriculum, it really goes a long way, and it's something which we need to really take into consideration. And the exclusion of youth and socially and economically, and how we must engage them in issues pertaining to youth, engage youth in issues that pertain to youth. I think that also came out very strongly. And yeah, again, with issues of curriculum, just to expand the scope, especially at also at the higher education institutions and the TVET colleges, and active participation also, and that collective commitment. I think to Dr. Kambale and team, there's much appreciation of this piece of work that you've presented here today, and there's actually a call for a follow-up session. So we will go back, we will take all of the input and the contributions that came through at this platform, and I think we can prepare for a follow-up session. I think that is a recommendation. But also, I think further, we want to see an ecosystem of institutions that support youth to cap the issue of a vulnerable and marginalized youth. Thank you so much for your participation, ladies and gentlemen. Your input has really been valuable, and it will definitely be taken into consideration. A special thanks to the colleagues that got us talking about this topic today. And just thank you also for your patience. I know the session was meant to end at 1 o'clock, but just thank you for still being in the platform. We'll now close this session and have yourselves a great day.